of all, thank you everyone for making the time. We are recording today's sessions that will be made available afterwards for your, if you want to go back and review anything and everything, you're more than welcome to. And I think it will go onto our webpage, will it, as well as a link?
Yeah.
So it'll be available for everyone. So the briefing today, just first of all, if I just say who I am. So I'm Angela Woodhouse, I'm the returning officer, and this is...
I'm Ryan O'Connell, the Democratic Electoral Services Manager.
So obviously he'll do most of the talking today. I'll just be doing a few bits at the beginning and then handing over to Ryan. You'll be pleased to hear it won't be me presenting. So we're going to cover... I know, you're disappointed, aren't you? Right, let me just move on. So we're going to cover a number of things today, including who's who, the key dates and election timetable, qualifications and disqualifications, nominations, agents, voter ID, postal votes, polling day, counting of votes, candidate spending and integrity issues and contacts. So I will point out that a lot of this information is available on the Electoral Commission site as well, so it's always worth having a look on there. They're very good. They have a lot of guidance for you, so do take a look on there as well. If there's further things you want to find out, or you can send us questions if you've got them. And I think we're happy to take questions as we go along. So if you want to indicate, and we'll take, and the same in the room as well. So don't feel like you have to wait till the end. Thank you. So yeah, as I've already said, I'm the returning officer. So I am responsible for running the election. So I have responsibility for ensuring the election is administered effectively and the experience of both voters and candidates is a positive one. So it'll be me personally in court if it all goes horribly wrong. Ryan, no pressure.
Well, no, you're the one who goes to court.
I know, it'll be just me, so it's fine. And I'm also the electoral registration officer. So in terms of the timetable, I won't go through every single date because you've had these before already and they will be made available, and we've put them up on the website as well. So you've got all these dates. I will flag some important dates. So the notice of election goes up on Friday, and then from 10 a.m. on Monday 21st of March we are open to accept nominations. So I'm sure you'll all be rushing in. I know some of you are already doing that paperwork from the questions we've had earlier. And Ryan will go through the requirements in terms of nominations in great detail, you'll be pleased to hear. So you can get all your questions out. And we can hopefully help you with everything. The other dates, just to highlight, the deadline for applications to register to vote is midnight 16th of April. So I know you have a role in terms of promoting, making sure people are on the register. And the other deadline to highlight is the new deadline for new postal vote applications and changes to any existing postal or proxy vote applications is 5 p.m. on the 17th of April. Just to make that clear as important dates. Oh, did I skip one? No. Okay. Other dates really to highlight and really just to go through is there's a deadline on 24th of April for the voter authority certificate. So this is the certificate that's available if an elector does not have an acceptable form of photo ID. So you may well come across people when you're out about campaigning. So really just to reassure them there is another route. If they don't have acceptable forms of ID, they can apply for a voter authority certificate and we can get that out to them so they can still vote in person if they need to. And that can be applied for online or by using a paper form. So there's a number of different ways to access that. And the other thing really just to highlight is emergency proxies. So that's available if an elector falls ill or where the elector's occupation, service or employment means they cannot get to a polling station in person or on voter ID grounds, but only if it's after the deadline for applications on 24th of April. So we do allow emergency proxies and you can apply for that up to 5 p.m. on polling day. And the other thing I meant to highlight to you is the return of election expenses, which is at the bottom of there. So it's 35 days from the results, and for parishes, it's 28 days from the date of election, just to flag that. Okay, and then to talk about qualifications. So I think we go through this many times, but just to highlight, candidates must satisfy criteria on the day they are nominated and on polling day in terms of they must be qualified to stand. So they have to be at least 18 years of age, be a British qualifying Commonwealth citizen or national of an EU member state. It really is important in terms of your form, that you mark all the qualifications that you satisfy. So don't just pick one, mark everything that you can. And we need to know, you need to go through that form properly. The other thing, just to flag, and you can see it on the slide, that with that bit about the principal or only place of work, it does include, it doesn't have to be paid employment. And I know for some of you that will be important. So it doesn't have to be paid to satisfy that principle. Oh, and at parish council elections, the qualification of living in the local authority area is extended and includes the parish and any area within 4.8 kilometres of it. I don't know why that's such a specific weird measurement. Oh, that's why. I hadn't worked that out. Okay, that explains that then. Stop laughing at me. Sorry, Steve Mumford's laughing at me. Right, Councillor Cox, go on. Yeah, I've
Thank you. It was about the previous slide where you're talking about the dates. I have come across at least one household where they've just moved to the area. They were registered to vote in a previous area. Is it down to how long it would take if they went online and just gave new details, i.e. a change of address? Or is there a cut-off for that? Or do they have to do it online?
So if you move to a new area after the registration date, you won't be able to vote in the new area in your election. You're registered in your previous area.
So when's the registration date?
The 24th. The one before. It's the 16th of April.
16th.
So they need to get their they need to register before the 16th.
Yeah, so
by midnight on the 16th of April.
Yeah, midnight.
But online.
So yes, so if they've applied online, it comes through the system and we'll get it. Anything that comes in before that date, we can pick up. We may process them after that deadline, but we have to have, we have to have received them.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Okay. No, I know all about what 3 miles is in kilometres. I think I know that. I run 5Ks. I know. I hadn't really twigged. Okay, and then in terms of disqualifications, so we've got a list there. It's what you'd expect. What I will say is that list is not comprehensive and candidates should read the Commission's guidance for further information on disqualifications. And information on disqualifications can be found under what you need to know before you stand as a candidate in the guidance for candidates and agents on the Electoral Commission's website. And I recommend you look at that. And I will issue a warning in that it is a criminal offence to make a false statement on nomination papers as to the qualification for being elected. So if candidates are in any doubt, they should contact their employer, consult the legislation, or if necessary, take their own independent legal advice. So we do take that quite seriously, and it's on you to make sure you tick the right boxes. And the other thing to highlight on the next slide, because there's a second bit to disqualifications. On the bit on holding a politically restricted post, those political restrictions do not apply at parish council elections, just to make that clear, as we may have those as well. Right, I'll hand it over to Ryan to start the conversation on nominations. That's all right.
So I'll just start by saying welcome to Kathy, who's joined us. Hi, Kathy, give everyone a wave.
Thank you.
Hello,
sorry I'm late.
So Kathy works in the elections team as well and is an expert on an awful lot of these processes and procedures, so we'll be here to answer questions too. Now, I've got a slightly awkward arrangement on here in terms of having to move slides in 2 different places, so you may find me looking over my shoulder to find out what it is I'm meant to
Hi
be talking
Duncan,
about.
have you been, hold on.
Hello.
Okay. So nominations. So for us as a council, this is the biggest set of nominations that we will have run, because this is the first time, obviously, that the whole borough is going up at once, and we expect multiple candidates from multiple groups and parties to come forward at the same time. So for us, this is going to be a fairly busy and frantic period. It's also something we have to get 100% right. And obviously you want your own nominations to be 100% right. So there's nothing that can be found wrong with them should an election get challenged. That's the last thing anybody wants. So we're going to go through this process with you to try to get the best out of that. And when you come into the team to do your nominations, the team have the best interests of you and the elections at heart when they are trying to make sure those nomination forms are done correctly. So every day from the nominations period, which is from the 25th of March through to the 5th of April, from 10 till 4 o'clock, you will be able to come in to hand in your nomination forms. They have to be handed in by hand. There's no other way of doing it. The law is very clear. They didn't even get relaxed during COVID. So you have to hand them in by hand. And what we ask is, because of the sheer volume of things we're going to be dealing with, that you do book a slot with us. So that's our expectation, that you book a slot in. If you don't book a slot and you turn up, we can't legally say no to you, but you may have to wait a long time before we get round to seeing your nomination form. So please do book a slot. The contact details at the end of this, the team are open to those nominations. So I'm just going to run through the basics here, really. But I guess the most important thing to highlight at this stage is they have to be on the current nomination forms, the new nomination forms, rather than the old ones. And the reason for that is that two things have changed. Two main things have changed. One is that the usage of commonly used names has changed. And the other is that the Elections Act 2022 is now mentioned in the legislation that you are declaring against. So we will need them on the new forms, and we will be able to tell if they're on the old ones. So please make sure you've got the latest version of the nomination forms. Right. Yeah, so obviously please take care when completing your nomination forms. We will assist, and we do offer informal checks of those when you come in. But please obviously do take your time to do those forms, particularly those of you who are coming in with bundles of forms at the same time. So parish councils tend to bring all of theirs in at the same time, and agents for the larger groups tend to bring all of theirs in at the same time, which obviously can take an awful long time for us. And if you book a slot and you've got a lot of papers, we'll ask you how many you've got. We will book a return slot with you as well, if it's something that will take longer than a day for us to process, which is perfectly possible in an election with 49 seats available. Oh, sorry, Maureen.
No. You need that we're doing all of ours. Would you rather have a big bundle, or would you rather, as we've got them, book a slot and bring them in, if you like, multiple batches?
So the question there, I don't know if everybody heard that, was, would we rather them in a big bundle or in individual batches? We would rather them in a bundle, because through a booked slot, don't turn up with a bundle without a booked slot. But through a book slot, much better to have a bundle with a return time, so that we can get them done properly and actually sit down with you and run through those forms afterwards. It saves us and everybody a lot of time and heartache in the long run. So although it's a lot of work up front, it's less work overall.
If there is a mistake, you won't repeat it in your next batch,
Yeah.
hopefully, if you waited till the end.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Because some of ours will be in 3 batches.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah.
So this slide just briefly outlines pretty much what I've already touched on there. That it's our biggest nominations ever. If you booked, it's easier. We're allowing about one form to take about 20 minutes. So you will have to be prepared to wait in reception. And if it is just a single form, we will ask you to wait, because we've had lots of instances of people wander around and then we can't find them 20 minutes later when we come down with a nomination form, and we don't want to take responsibility for your form at that point. It's still your responsibility. And we are arranging free parking, and we can give you details of how that will work for the purposes of nominations. So you need to include your full name, and you can use the commonly used name boxes. And for those of you who are experienced on elections, the rules have finally been relaxed to a common sense standard, really, now, where if, for example, you are known by your first name, and you're known by your first name and not your middle name, you can now put your first name as a commonly used name. You never used to be able to do that. Many of you will be probably aware of that when you tried it and were told not to. You can now do that. So that's been relaxed. Sorry, there's a question there from Margaret.
Yes, yes, thanks, Ryan. The forms, where do we get them from? Where do they appear? How do we get them?
Okay, so you can actually download them, but you can request them from
Oh,
the
right.
team.
Okay, so where do I download them from?
And Margaret, Maureen's saying that she will handle your forms.
She's got them.
Yeah, to get them for you.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right. So yes, you need to include your full name. So that includes all of your middle names, whether you like them or not. you have to include them on the form. And on the occasions where we can see on the register that you do have a middle name, we don't always know because not everyone registers with their middle names. But if you do, we will remind you of the fact that you have a middle name that you are meant to put on that form, because it has to be your full name. For the description field, there are 3 options, which is actually, well, there's kind of 2 options, isn't there, really, for a borough election, Kathy, which is independent, or you have a description that relates to the authorised description that you're allowed to use from your party or group from your certificate of authorisation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right. You'll all be pleased to hear that the 2 subscribers
Yes.
is staying following COVID. That's something that everybody's celebrating. And it makes the process that little bit easier, but you do need to get those subscribers right. So we do need to have the polling district in the box. We don't want the name of the parish in the box. We want the polling district in the box. And then we want the electoral registration number, and it needs to be from the correct register, the one that was in force in March. Oh, thanks, Claire. Claire's just pointed out that for parish elections, you don't need a description. In fact, for parish elections, you can put any 6 words as your description, as long as they aren't confused. They can't be confused with an existing registered group, and obviously they aren't profane, etc. But you can use 6 words to describe. So often we see retired or existing parish councillor gets put on there quite regularly. So sorry, back to subscribers. So they have to be from the current register with the correct electoral number and the correct polling district. So I will highlight to you this time that our polling districts are a little bit more confusing, just to add to the fun of this election, because we reference the old polling district and the new one, because we're in a transitional period where we're moving from old wards to new wards. So they're just slightly longer than you might be expecting, but you can find it on the register. If you're in any doubt, you can ask the team, we'll look it up. And when you bring your form in, if you've got it wrong, we will correct it for you. The only thing we can't correct, and you can't correct there, is signatures. So if somebody has signed it and they're not on the register, they're not, then we can't accept that. Obviously, and you have to leave and come back and book again, obviously, to come back, but leave to get those signatures in place. Yeah, make sure that the people signing the form know what their information they're putting on the form is going to be used for as well, to meet data protection requirements. Kathy, is there anything you want to add to that in terms of the subscribers?
I need to say, a bit like the parish, not to include the name of the parish in the polling district box. It is the prefix for the polling district.
Yeah. Yeah, lots of fascinating habits that we see in previous ones.
It's very confusing electoral register.
Mhm.
So my understanding was you couldn't ask for it. You could only ask for the old district if you're a councillor, yeah. But the new one you can't ask for until you've been declared as a candidate. So that sort of makes it difficult to work out what the numbers are.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, so that question was around the register and some of the complications we have with the registers at the moment. So we need to think about elections as being for everybody, not just existing councillors. And the register that is available currently is available to parties, and they'll get a full copy of the register. So if you're standing for a party, then you can get hold of that through that route. If you're an existing councillor, then you're entitled to the register for your existing area only, because you're getting it as a councillor, not as a candidate. You're getting that as a representative of an area, so you can have that, but you can't have the new area. The rule that kicks in that allows all candidates to get hold of the register kicks in on the last day that the notice of election could have been put up. So we're putting the notice up on the 22nd, which ties us in with the Borough, with the PCC elections, but the actual last date it could have gone up is the 26th. So anybody who is a declared candidate on or after the 26th of March is then entitled to a copy of the register. So there is always this loop, this little bit of, well, how do I know who's you know, on the register. Well, from the 26th of March, someone can actually just declare themselves as being a candidate, and we can supply that register information to them before they've actually formally submitted their form. So we can get the data to people if they need it, in order for them to complete their forms. And obviously subscribers now being just down to 2 doesn't make that process substantially easier. But if you're a member of a party, you can go to if you've got an agent who's looking after it for you, or your head office, you can go to them and get that information to complete it. If you're standing as an independent, you will need to, and you're not already a councillor, then you would need to essentially wait until the 26th in order to be able to get hold of that information. But you do have until the 5th of April to submit your forms. There's a loaded question. That question was, why are independents discriminated against? So
absolutely.
So I mean, we generally have a system that assumes that groups and parties are going to be in place, and I appreciate that they aren't in all instances, and it therefore works that those people do get copies of the register. And so I think it's just an unintended consequence of the way the registers are given out to those groups and parties, that they get it sooner. So what I actually like to do, so last year we opened the nominations a week earlier than we had to, and I don't want us to do that, and I'm sure Andrew agrees, but I don't want us to do that again in the future, because it creates this period of time where independents can't get hold of information that others can. So we've only gone slightly earlier this time to the 22nd, because it ties in with the Police and Crime Commissioner election that we're holding at the same time. So we have considered that fact, that there's different access to information going on to try to level the playing field. But I would say you have got up until the 5th of April to get your nomination form to us, and with 2 subscribers, hopefully that makes it easier. And also, I don't make the rules. Martin.
So therefore, could we get the people who we know are in an area that will be the legitimate ward without the number, can we get them to sign it and put their printed name, and then just come to give in the forms? So we don't really need anything other than the correct polling district and election number, do we?
Yeah, so you could do that, and we would advise you of who they are, but we would request that you don't do that if you do have access to the numbers, because it just increases the level of work that we've got to do. So if you can't get hold of the numbers, then yes, you can do that.
But do make a note of their address, because to
it's
make sure
easier
we've got
for
the
them
right
to
person.
find them.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Cynthia.
Yes, I've actually booked a slot for bringing in my nomination and Diana Lewins' nomination on the 26th of March at 10 AM. And I've also completed a request for the electoral roll. So I'm hoping that I can collect that at the same time, please.
Yeah, yes, and we do expect multiple requests and things to come in at the same time when somebody comes in to do their nominations. Obviously, there would be a difficulty if that happened on the 25th, but anybody who's coming in from the 26th onwards, then obviously we can provide copies of the register.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yes, Vanessa. Okay. We can give you a paper copy. Yeah, we can definitely do that, but you should also be able to open zip files on your computer, so it might be worth speaking to IT, but we'll pick that up separately, shall we? Right. Yeah. I'm conscious there's another meeting that's going to start in 35 minutes, so I'm going to need to rattle on through.
I can't delay you.
These. So as well as the nominations form is obviously split into different parts, you've also got the home address form as well. So that is your full name again, your home address in full, your qualifying address, which needs to go against every qualification. As Andrew said earlier, if you've got more than one qualification, put them all on the form. The full name, home address in full of the witness who's witnessing your consent to nomination needs to go on that, so they need to match. And when you do your addresses, we want the addresses as they would appear on the register. So that means that they include, for example, Maidstone and Kent, assuming that you're in an area that is classed as Maidstone. But they need to include Maidstone and Kent on there as well. Yes, Cynthia. Cynthia, you're muted. Sorry, Cynthia. Oh, there we go.
Sorry. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah. Just to point out that last year, I actually put Allington as part of my address, but it was wrong because it's not Allington on the electoral roll. So I had to go through and delete Allington everywhere. Yep. So I haven't got caught out like that this time.
I'm getting the impression there's lots of gold stars coming your way.
Ticking lots of boxes.
What?
I said we're going to give you lots of gold stars.
Oh, I don't know about that.
So part 2 of the home address form is about whether you want your home address to be made public or not. So that's an optional form. And if you do not want your home address to be made public, then the name of the area, assuming that that's where your home address is situated, if it's the Maidstone Borough, is Maidstone that you want to put in there. Right, then we have the consent to nomination form. Again, most of the same things apply here, really, that it's full names, full addresses, and for the qualifications, you want to select all of them that apply. And Kathy, I'm right in thinking this is the form where you need to actually cross them off, the ones that you don't want to
Yes.
use. So the first lot, you put your address and you tick the ones that that do apply. On this form, you have to cross through the ones that don't apply, just, you know, to make it extra fun for everybody. Okay, Margaret first, then Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Can you run me through the what we need for the witness? That can't be the same as the people that sign the nomination form, can it? So what's the requirement for the witness of where the candidate lives?
Can be anybody from anywhere.
Oh, so I could ask my neighbour then?
Yes.
Doesn't have to be, yeah. So the person, I can knock next door and they can sign it for me.
Literally anybody.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
So as long as you've referenced the same person who witnesses it on the between the forms, so it matches up, then yes, it's fine.
Pardon?
So you mentioned the witness it's mentioned in a couple of places on the form. They have to match up.
Oh, right. Okay. So right. Will that be mentioned? Oh, okay. So their name and then their signature and yeah. Okay. Right.
The name and address is on one page and the signature and the date is on another.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And Paul.
Yeah, just a simple thing, Ryan. The forms you mentioned, obviously, we need to use the new forms for the borough election. Presumably, the parish council forms are the same, are they? Or are they different?
Correct. They've been updated for the Elections Act as well, yes.
So it's just the same form as we just use either for the council election or the parish election, yeah?
No, use the correct form for each one. There are slight differences, and you don't need to appoint an election agent on the parish forms because you can't have an election agent other than yourself on the parish ones.
Okay, thanks.
Ian.
Yes, Ryan. Just a quick one. I assume I can get my wife to witness my signature.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, just checking. Thank you.
So I'm just going to check the chat here. So Derek has asked, can we put name of party on description for parish? I mean, you'd have to have a certificate of authorization that allowed you to use it for the parish election. And it is possible to have political groups on parish nomination, but most 99.9% of instances, party kind of politics doesn't come into the nomination forms for parishes. So it would be unusual to do that. But technically, if you had authorization to do it, you could.
Okay, thanks. That answers it. Thank you.
Talking of certificate of authorisations, so yeah, you must have written permission to use the party name description from the nominating officer, and the certificate allows the use of a particular description and of names. Must be submitted by the 4 p.m. on the 5th of April, so the same as the close of nominations. And there's a little note there for me to remind you that we haven't necessarily got all the nominating officer forms in yet, so we have to have the overarching form from the nominating officer to know who they are in order to be able to check your certificates of authorization. So we need to make sure each group has given that to us. Sorry, someone's talking there. So Kathy will be chasing, but if you can give your head offices a nudge or your agents a nudge to make sure we get the nominating officer forms so that we can start accepting those certificates of authorization from the first day. Or we'll have to check. I don't know. Right, can your agent or nomination officer witness your signatures? Yes. Can the witness be the same as a proposer or nominator? So can they be the same person, Kathy?
Oh,
Has to be separate, doesn't it?
Oh, we'd have to check that one. I would have thought it would be okay, but we'd have to check it.
Okay, we'll double check that one. Yeah, there's also an emblem request form as part of the authorization, which is about the emblem that appears on the paper. Again, same deadline. I don't know if we're going to get any joint party candidates, but that's when they're nominated for half of more than one party. Yes. So election agents. So there's an election agents form on the borough papers. If you don't appoint an election agent, you automatically become your own agent. That happens by default. And again, the notification of the appointment has to reach us by 4 p.m. on the 5th of April. Although it is actually technically possible to change your agent midway through, but that's the deadline for the initial list of agents. Right, so I've just got on this slide some of the common errors that we see, or in fact that I anticipate with the must be on the new forms one. But these are just to run through these in advance. If you can please double check for these things. So must be on the new forms, must be the full address, as I said with Maidstone, Kent. Do not abbreviate address information, so we want to see road and street in full. Other forenames in full means all of your forenames, even if you like to hide some of them normally. Candidates' consent to nomination, so that has to be signed a maximum of a month before the close of nominations. So in this case, the 5th of March. If you come in with something dated the 4th of March, we will reject it. You have to go away, get a fresh signature and get it redated. So make sure, if you've already done your forms, that the candidate's consent to nomination, the candidate has completed that on the 5th of March or later. And please do keep all the pages of legislation with your form. We noticed that in particular parishes like to strip out all the list of the different legislation that they're declaring against. Please leave that as part of the form. It is, we want it as on the paperwork so everything goes onto the file, because obviously in the event of an electoral petition or electoral challenge, we've got everything there. Paul.
Sorry, I forgot.
Okay. And Martin, no, you can't put independent as a logo. Logos have to be registered with the Electoral Commission. So there would have to be, if you form a group, whatever group that is, you can register it with the Electoral Commission in advance, and you could agree a logo with them, in which case you will be able to use that. But it has to be a registered logo and a registered description, etc. With the exception of parishes who don't get to use logos, but unless they've got a certificate of authorization, but they can use what they want in their description, as we discussed earlier. There are other agents that you will appoint throughout this process, so they can be appointed to attend polling stations, post-vote opening, so count and polling agents and post-vote opening agents. You can appoint those as well, and you can see the dates there. And we give 48 hours notice for postal vote opening. And there's just a little note there. We expect postal vote opening to commence in the week commencing the 22nd of April. So we normally try to time it with when the letters land from Royal Mail. Obviously, with where Royal Mail is going at the moment, it's quite hard to tell when those letters are going to land. But assuming that they land on time, we'll be starting in the week commencing the 22nd.
June.
And we discussed this earlier, this slide. So hopefully this makes sense and matches what I said earlier. But essentially, 26th of March is the date for anyone who's declared themselves a candidate to get access to the register information. And if you want stuff now, we can provide street lists. So street lists do not contain personal information. So if you want to know what streets are in a new ward for campaigning purposes, we can provide that. If you email us.
Yeah, I've had that. It's very useful.
Yeah, good. So I'm going to state some fairly obvious things here. Hopefully everybody knows this already, but you can only use the register for permitted purposes. So to complete the nomination form, to help you campaign and check on donations and loans. Yeah, so obviously, yeah, don't abuse your access to the register. Registration. So again, we gave you the deadlines for this earlier with the 16th of April, and we encourage people to apply online. You are uniquely placed to encourage people to register to vote. So if you speak to people and they're not registered and they should be, remember it's a requirement to be registered. If you're eligible, then they should be. So please do encourage them to do that. They will need to provide the national insurance number. But they can go without that, but it is a bit more of a difficult process. Absent voting applications. Okay, so this is one of the changes from the Elections Act 2022, and these applications can now be made online. I do appreciate that some groups like to go around and have their own version of the postal vote forms that they hand out to electors to complete, and they like to gather them back in. We are going to ask you, I mean, we can't tell you not to, but we're going to encourage you not to, because we would prefer it if people applied online. It makes our lives so much easier, because the new process has now made it difficult for us to process paper applications. So as part of the shift online, it has increased the workload of paper applications. So if we get a whole load of paper applications in the run up to the election, it's going to be difficult for us to deal with. So we are encouraging everyone to go online. They will need the national insurance number. Same as they do to register online really now. Yeah, so they can only apply for a postal or proxy if they are also registered for these elections. Right, so other changes, and these are quite big changes really. Sorry, Derek, I'll come to you just after this slide, if that's okay. So campaigners cannot handle postal votes for other electors who are not close relatives or someone for whom they provide regular care. So candidates and campaigners actually can't handle postal vote packs now for anyone who isn't a close relative or themselves. Obviously, in fact, it's a criminal offence to do that now. There is a definition of what a campaigner is, and you can find that definition on the Electoral Commission website. It's not our role to advise you on the definition of a campaigner, but it is a matter that is a criminal offence should a campaigner do it. So there's an exception for them to be able to handle postal voting documents if that's a feature of a job they hold, i.e. if they're a postal worker. And there's new limits on the number of postal votes that can be handed in. So that's a maximum of 5 plus their own for each poll. So we will be sending out separate postal vote packs for each of the 3 elections that there may be in an area. So if there's a parish election, there'll be a borough, a parish, and PCC in some areas. There'll be 3 separate postal vote packs. So people can bring back up to 6 in total for each of those elections, so up to 18 back to us at the same time. This process has been made more complicated, but we would ask people not to go around handling postal votes, but just to post them in good time, as soon as possible, post them in a Royal Mail box so they come to us in the normal way. If they don't, if they're going to be handed in, then we are required to complete a form, or you're required to complete a form, which we then have to sign, and one of our designated officers will sign for that. That will happen at Maidstone House reception or in any polling station for the relevant area on the day. And obviously the polling staff are being trained on that as well. But we really would encourage people to put them into the post boxes. If a form isn't completed, those will just be rejected, those postal votes. There is no way to get them through without a form if they're handed in like that. And sorry, just before I come to questions, if you normally come to the offices and hand something in to us, or you see me on the street and say, oh, Ryan, can you just take that? I won't be able to do that anymore. Okay, there's just no way that I can handle those. There needs to be a form completed and exchanged. So please don't leave anything with anyone without a form being done. So before I come to you, Martin, Derek, you did have your hand up briefly. Did you have a question?
It was only regarding those electors that don't have internet access with the application form.
Yeah, so they can request a hard copy form, and we can do things in hard copy.
So can I download the hard copy and present to them?
Yeah, you can, yeah.
And then they can put it in an envelope and or they put it in a letterbox. Yeah, that's it. Okay, yeah. That's great. That answers that. Thank you.
Okay. Martin.
You were saying about returning a postal vote pack that's been, in other words, an actual vote on election day.
Yes.
Is that allowed? And am I correct in saying that it can be taken to any polling station, or does it have to be within the area that they originate from? That polling station.
Yes. Yeah. So
it does have to be.
Yeah. Return it to the correct area.
Yeah. It needs to be within the ward.
So is that a change?
No.
No.
It's always been right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So there is a definition. That's the definition of a campaigner there, just quickly for you. So either a candidate or the agent, an election agent employed by the candidate, member of registered political parties who's carrying out activity to promote a particular outcome, or someone employed by a registered political party in connection with that party's political activities. Right, voter ID. I'm not going to labour this one particularly long here because we covered this last time, but obviously anyone who is voting in a polling station will be required to show ID. So whether that's the individual whose vote it is, whether that's the proxy voter for them, anyone voting in a station now has to show a valid form of ID. We can provide a form of ID ourselves. So those people, if they apply in time, that's for a voter authority certificate if they have no access to anything else. And it's worth noting that expired documents are acceptable. So expired passport, expired driving license, as long as they are of a likeness of the person who is holding them, we would accept those. One form of ID, the most common form we had to reject at the last elections, was shotgun licenses.
Yeah.
People think that shotgun license, because it's been through so many stages in order to get one, would be applicable. It's not. So that is not enough. So if you're talking to people, particularly in rural areas, do remind them to bring a valid form of ID. And there is a national campaign going on about that again. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, it's only certain bus passes.
Older persons bus passes are accepted because they are government issued documents. Yeah, not the other ones because they aren't issued through the same process. Right, so I'm going to touch on this slide now with a fair few differences on it. One major difference on it. So do use imprints on all your campaign material. This now includes websites. So digital imprints are now a thing. So please do make sure that when you're campaigning, you're using digital imprints. The guidance for that is available on the Electoral Commission website if you type in digital imprints or imprints, but you can also just find it in the guidance for candidates and agents. So agents in particular, if you want to have a look at that, I know it's you that I normally end up talking to about whether something's got an address written on it somewhere or not. Yeah, so please do take note of the new digital imprint guidance. Sorry, yeah, Vanessa.
No, it's one of those rules. Yeah, you have to pick for
there are some, you know, I was getting some particularly nasty emails from people in a certain area. And I thought, I'm just about to post all this.
Yeah, okay.
There isn't anywhere around, is there? That's fine. I looked at the PO box and it's like 50 quid a month.
I can have a look and see whether there's a way around it. I'm just thinking because of the way home address forms have changed.
Yeah,
and
you don't have to have it on.
It's become increasingly the case that people don't want their addresses to appear in places. I'll have a look and see, but I wouldn't hold out hope.
Yeah. You just have to put an imprint on there.
Yeah, so that I would just advise you to read the rules and digital imprints. It doesn't have to go on every thing that is produced electronically. There are different rules for different things. So do have a look. Yeah, understood.
You're putting yourself at risk putting that information out.
So hopefully all those other things are things that you are aware of, or you can see on the slide there. They should be fairly straightforward. Right, code of conduct for campaigners. Obviously, campaigning is an essential part of our democracy. Do, as I've already said, encourage people to register to vote. You can talk to them about absent vote applications, but be aware of all the rules and stuff if you're going to be handling things. And you can obviously encourage electors to come talk to us as well if they need further advice or guidance and you're unsure about how to give that to them on the doorstep, particularly with implications for absent votes. Yeah, and if people need a voter authority certificate, ask them to apply for that in good time. I think we've covered that sufficiently. Right, campaigning outside polling stations. So obviously outside the environs of a polling station, you can, as in away from the immediate environs of a polling station, you can campaign, but do keep access to polling places clear. Do not block anything. And tellers are a part of what we do as well. And obviously we will speak to tellers if we feel that they are interfering with the voting process, but they shouldn't be. They need to. There isn't a legal basis for a teller. They are there because essentially the returning officer allows them to be there. So they need to bear that in mind. Really, that's not meant to be threatening. It came across far too threatening, but you know what I mean.
I'll talk about tellers later.
Okay, sure.
Got that on my blood.
Yeah, so hopefully you're aware of these rules, but our office will be open to match polling, so 7 till 10. For queries relating to election finance issues, contact the Electoral Commission. Yeah, and I've already touched on most of that stuff. So we've touched on complete postal votes handed into polling stations as well. So polling station staff will not be able to provide advice about whether someone is a campaigner, but simultaneously the Electoral Commission have obviously advised us that we can also reject postal votes if we have reasonable cause to believe that somebody is a campaigner. Cynthia.
Yes. How many counting agents are we going to be allowed to have at the count?
Yeah, so I will touch on that later, but we can't tell you that right now. We will be as generous as we can, but we can't do that calculation until we know how many candidates we've got. There's a set formula that we have to do that relates to the number of counters and candidates. So until we've got the candidates part of the equation, we can't advise on that, but we will. I wouldn't worry about the space too much because it's being counted up at the showground at the Clive Empson building, so there should be plenty of space for people. So Angela will be as generous as possible.
Okay.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Margaret.
Yes, Ryan, thank you very much for answering my email. I wonder if you have time now to actually discuss exactly how the count will be done, because that's something that haunts my nightmares, thinking about exactly how that's going to be done.
So
thank you.
We've got that later.
That's fine. It's here. So we've got counting of votes now. So I'll quickly rattle through this. So that they're actually the stage 1 of the count and stage 2 will be taking place on the Friday, and the PCC will be taking place on the Sunday. So it's on the Friday that we'll be doing the counting you're referring to, Margaret. but we will be taking the boxes in on the Thursday evening.
Take them.
Thank you.
You can come and observe on a Thursday evening, but generally people don't, because it's frankly very boring and involves lots of calculators and ballot paper accounts.
Watch it all rushing
But
in.
the main counts on the Friday. So what we've got this time for the borough elections is we have 22 wards up, only 3 of which are single member wards, which means we've got 19 wards with multi-vote ballot papers on them. And what we use for that is something called a kangaroo board. So it's a board that has a plastic pouch at the bottom, hence the name, and we slot ballot papers in across it, and then we summarise across, and we get a summary sheet that summarises those votes as they go. That allows us to count ballot papers that have multiple votes on them, or up to, let's say 3 votes. They may only have 1 or 2. We can cope with that, obviously. We still take doubtfuls out in the same way. We still obviously do the normal doubtfuls process. You can have partially accepted votes now because of multiple votes on the ballot paper. So it increases the complexity. What it means is that for the stage 2, in all except the 3 wards with 1 member, you won't be able to do in quite the same way the process of watching the stacks build up. Because we know you do that. We can see you do it from the other side of the desks. You won't be able to do that in quite the same way because we'll be processing them as a mixed ballot paper with multiple votes on it. Sorry, before I come to you, Margaret, does that help? Does that help deal with your nightmares?
Somewhat. Put it that way.
Okay.
I just cannot imagine how it's going to be.
We'll
and how the observers are going to be able to observe.
we could share the video on kangaroo.
You know, obviously when it's simple piling up, you can see where 1 vote, if it's not that it does, hardly ever to say, but you know, but how are the how's anyone going to observe what's happening when it's happening?
In front of them.
You know, I mean,
so it'll still be done on the desks in front of you.
Yeah.
And we've got to remember the real purpose of observing is to make sure we're not doing anything untoward. So you'll be able to see us follow the same process.
Trying to work out
human error is human error. You know, you can't help that. But you know, that does haunt my nightmares. Thinking, because I mean, obviously, as you say, we can stand there and watch, and we can see it all happening, but I just cannot get my head around how we're going to see it all happening. You know, in the very best, obviously no one's going to try and do something wrong. I can't imagine that happening, but it's just that you know, thinking about actually the physicality of it. So anyway, that's something that I'm sure you will, and I have every confidence that you will, and your team and everything will work out, but it's just, you know, a little bit concerning.
Yeah, we're giving ourselves lots of practice before we get in there.
All right.
Martin, you had your hand up.
I did, yes. The question about a spoilt ballot paper. What if somebody put 3 crosses in 1 box and none anywhere else? Does that make it spoiled, or is it making clear the intention that they've put all 3 in 1?
No, it'd be fine. It's just a single vote.
It just counts as 1 vote.
Yeah, exactly.
So that
Okay.
candidate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a lot more complicated options than that, but.
And we'll put doubtful ballot placemats up around the hall so you can get an idea of what we allow and what we don't, and we'll run through with candidates and agents when we get to that point on doubtfuls. So should be nice and clear for everyone.
Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan and Angela. I assume that at the count, given, as you say, that every ward, and a lot of them are 3-member wards, the count's probably going to take longer than it has done normally. As you say, given that you're going to be using the kangaroo ball to try to trace what people are doing, and the likelihood in these type of elections where the bulk of the votes across anywhere will be for multiple parties. I mean, that's, you know, quite a likely outcome. But I just wondered if you had any feel at this stage as to, you know, how much longer it would take. I mean, I think the last couple of years we've tended to be finished by sort of lunchtime. I assume we're looking at some stage later into the afternoon before much, apart from single member wards, will be sort of able
Some
to,
two members. will be
able to declare.
Yeah. So Paul, the context is obviously we've had whole new boundaries. We've got our first whole council elections. We've got a new method of counting.
Police and Crime Commission.
We don't at the moment know how many candidates we've got because we haven't had the nominations period. So I won't be able to give anything like an accurate estimate, but I would expect it to go on into the afternoon.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's what I would have expected.
Okay. Spending issues. Okay. So it's the responsibility of the election agent, and don't forget, if you don't provide us with an election agent, that defaults to the candidate. These are rules that you need to make sure you get right. This is the area where candidates and agents are most likely to fall foul of things. So do read the Electoral Commission guidance. Do seek advice on this as you need to. The limit on expense is £960 plus 8p per elector for the register in force in March 2024. And in the first candidate letter that we send you, and Kathy will correct me if I'm wrong, but the first candidate letter we send you, we will give you the numbers. So you have it. Is that right? Yeah. Yep. So we will arm you with those figures. But yeah, and you must get and keep receipts over £20. There's a couple of questions there. So I've been to a number of well, that's good news. So Keith there has just informed us it's not as complicated to observe as we might think with multi-member wards. He's got some experience of them.
Good.
Can you let a food van or vans gather outside? That makes it sound like they kind of gather naturally and kind of just migrate to the. We will provide some refreshments, like tea, coffee, and biscuits and things. But there are no plans to put a food van out there. We can see whether one will come along, and I can talk to the showground about whether they've got any experience of it, because obviously they put on lots of events. So that's an idea we can take away.
Man
No pun
cannot
intended.
live by biscuits alone, Ryan.
Sorry?
Man cannot live by biscuits alone, especially if you're diabetic. But I could bring my own food. But anyway.
I was going to say, bring a packed lunch, I think is what we're advising.
Candidate spending returns due 35 days after the result of the election. They're made public. Sample returns are reviewed, and it's a criminal offence if you don't do it properly. Oh, sorry, Paul.
Yeah, Ryan, in terms of the March cut-off for the election expense, you know, that election roll, presumably that includes the sort of March update, which was issued at the beginning of this month. I just wondered if perhaps Kathy would know that, just because obviously we've all got the that data.
Yes, it's a notice of alteration, so it's the 1st of March figures.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay. And there's the contacts. What I also wanted to highlight to you is that on our website, there's a candidates and agents page that we have put up. So if you go, see if I can just share this. Can everybody see that?
Oh.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
You couldn't see if anyone
I can just see a website right now. So you'll see at the top, it's got the links there that take you from the council's homepage. You click on Council and Democracy, Voting Elections, Candidates and Agents. And on there, on the elections page, there's a link embedded on the page to get to Candidates and Agents. You'll see the first briefing that we did. This one will be going up there as well. There's notification of a webinar it's been and gone now. Candidates register request form is on there. The guidance for nominations is on there as well, with the separate forms for parishes and borough nomination forms, and obviously contact details and a link to the Electoral Commission as well. So hopefully you find that page useful. If there's something that you think we could provide on there that we haven't, do please let us know.
We are going to include on there some key dates as well if you're elected. So things like when induction training is going to be, and some key meetings, just so you've got that in advance, and it's not a nice surprise after May that you've suddenly got to be at a lot of different things. So we'll get that information on as well for everyone.
Yeah.
In the next couple of weeks, it will go live.
And just so everybody knows, the planned dates for the induction sessions for councillors are in the evening from 6:30 to 8:30 on the 8th of May and the 15th of May, just so prospective candidates can have those in their diaries. Oh, Faye.
Yeah, just a quickie on the website.
Sorry, Anne, I'll come to you in a minute. Faye, go ahead.
On the website, it's old, I know, but the briefing notes from your first briefing aren't available. It goes to a squiz matrix. Gone wrong then.
Okay, we've had a number of issues with a few things on our website where that's been happening. So we'll when we find them, we report them. So we'll report that.
We'll pick it up. No problem. Thank you. Thank you.
Anne?
I've just clicked on the Borough nomination form and actually it's not working. You're getting just a sample with all the example of how to fill it in, but we don't have a blank one so we can fill it.
Oh yeah, sorry, I should say, yeah, it's the guidance on completing the form on there.
So how do we get the form?
Useful to put the actual form.
Yeah, we'll put the
we'll add a link.
Inside.
But if you go onto electoral commission site, you can get it there.
Okay.
Yeah, they are available online already.
But we'll put the link up because it'd be more helpful, wouldn't it?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah, no problem.
And then you just mentioned about some dates about the 8th of May, and I was writing something and I didn't catch what the date was for.
So that's for that will be when we're holding our induction for councillors.
Inductions. Okay.
Yeah.
So the date
one? Sorry.
8th of May.
8th of May and the 15th of May, and there'll be evening sessions from 6:30 to 8:30, and they'll be at the town hall.
Brilliant, thank you.
That's all right, no problem. And we'll get that.
Is that site. Or, sorry, Angela, is that or one or the other, or use part one and part two?
And part one, part two, so we don't
two.
Overwhelm everyone with a load of information in one go, because I think it's a bit much. So we split into two. Especially if you're brand new, it's a lot to take in, isn't it? Our experienced councillors will know.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've come to the end of the allocated time. So are there any other questions? No?
Okay.
Well, no, just to say thank you very much.
No, thank you all
no
for
problem.
attending.
Thank you for attending.
Thank you very much. Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, all three of you. Thank you and good evening.
Bye.
Good evening. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.